Good evening and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the SpaceX CRS-11 post-launch news conference. We wouldn't be here if it weren't a tremendously successful day, and we're all very pleased to be here. And I'm happy to be joined by, to my left, Mr. Ven Phen, manager of the International Space Station Transportation Integration Office at Johnson Space Center in Houston. And to his left, Hans Koenigsmann, SpaceX Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability and the Chief Engineer on console for today's successful launch. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Michael.
And we'll start off with some opening statements.
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you very much. And congratulations to our SpaceX colleagues. Another wonderful launch. We're very much looking forward to having Dragon come back to visit the space station. In this case, especially so because this Dragon was one that had come to us previously back in 2014 on CRS-4. Let's see, it's been the space station is in excellent shape, ready to receive Dragon. It's been a busy couple of days and a busy weekend. Yesterday, the crew members for 49S did safely land in Kazakhstan. This morning, the on-orbit crew finished packing Cygnus and closed the hatch. Tomorrow, they'll unberth Cygnus, and that'll clear the way for Dragon to come back to space station on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hans?
I'm super happy, as always, after a good launch. And I do want to really thank NASA for the opportunity to bring up cargo and do what we love to do, launching rockets and deploying spacecraft. And also like the opportunity to thank the team. Falcon 9 team did super great today. And Pat team worked awesome. Dragon team is very busy right now. I'm pretty sure they're doing excellent. And then 45th Space Wing and the FAA did support us, in a very great way today too. So and in particular, the person I would like to thank is Mike McAleen. This was not here at this press conference, but who was at the other press conference for opening the skies and clearing the clouds and making it possible to launch through the Florida summer afternoon weather. Dragon is on orbit. The solar arrays are deployed. They're working well. They're pointing to the sun and producing power. We will open the guidance and control door a little bit later today, and then as you already heard, Dragon is going to berth with the station on Monday morning, 10 a.m. exactly. And the Falcon 9 second stage has been deorbited. It landed in the ocean southwest of Australia. And from what I can tell, the mission was excellent and a great success and had no hiccups. The countdown was very smooth, very quiet. I had the opportunity to be back in my chief engineer role today, and I really enjoyed it greatly, and it was great fun. Maybe I do this again. So overall, a great day.
We agree. Thank you, Hans. Okay, at this time we'll take questions, and for those of you who are following on social media, please use the hashtag AskNASA. Emily from our NASA social media group is here to facilitate getting your questions out. If you're in the room, please raise your hand if you have a question. Wait for the radio microphone, state your name and affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question, and we'll go ahead and take questions. Chris, here in the front row.
Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight, with one for both of you. For Hans, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about recovery operations for the booster. I understand this is the first time you're going to start streamlining some of those processes for recovering the booster once it's landed. And for the NASA question, can you talk a little bit about Cygnus being unberthed about a month ahead of when it was originally scheduled to? Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, thanks for that question, because I should also mention the first stage landed really, really well on the landing zone 1. From what I can tell, was an excellent centered landing, and we're going to take the next couple of days to save it, break it over, and then bring it in the hangar and inspect it as you pointed out, we're going to streamline it, so it's going to be less inspections probably than the first one, and then we got to decide what we do with that with this particular booster.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, with respect to Cygnus, yeah, it's just demonstrating its operational flexibility. So a few months ago, it came up and delivered about 3,000 kilograms worth of cargo resupply and research. And based on we got everything out, we got everything back in. It's completely packed. It's full of disposal as well as a few other experiments. So because it's full, we decided, since we had this one-day opportunity after the launch scrub on the 1st, to go ahead and unberth Cygnus now. It's got 2 experiments. It's doing after post-unberth. So it's going to stick around in orbit for about a week. So it's going to do the Sapphire experiment as well as deploy some NanoRacks external deployers, external payloads.
Ken.
Hi, Ken Kramer from Universe Today and the Northeast Astronomy Forum for Hans and for NASA. For Hans, can you talk about any improvements that you have made? You've learned lessons from landing. We talked about that a little bit before, that you learned a couple. I wonder if you have applied any to this booster, like the grid fins changing or the paint on the side, or anything else to the engine that you can tell about any engines. And for NASA, how long crew supplies we have now with this mission for the astronauts on the ISS?
So on this one, there's a visible change on the landing zone. We paint the deck with something that is more conductive. That's the one you can see when you watch the camera on the first stage. Other than that, we fine-tune minor parts and components, not overall a whole lot of changes.
Nothing to the grid fins yet.
No.
Okay, and with respect to consumables on board, we're in really good shape on board right now. It's greater than 6 months, I think, in all categories. There is some food going up, and I can get those exact numbers for you afterwards. But really the utility of SpaceX and the SpaceX mission is science. So we have literally tons of science going up on this. So it's been focused more towards utilization and research. But we're in good shape as far as consumables on board.
Okay, we'll take a question here, then we'll go to the phone for a question, and then Emily has a couple of social media questions we'll take.
Hi, Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. A couple of questions, one for each of you, I guess. For Hans, with the 2-day weather delay, does that impact your launch date mid-June at all for Bulgaria Sat? And for Vin, can you talk a little bit about your status on CRS-2, the CRS-2 providers? Have you turned on any missions or ordered any missions from any of the 3 providers that you have under CRS-2 yet? And if so, which ones? Thanks.
So with respect to the Bulgaria, the next launch, basically, it's still mid-June. We got to evaluate if anything moves, but that's not planned for. I guess that was all the questions you had for me, right?
Yeah, let's see. With respect to CRS-2, yeah, all 3 of our vendors are in very good shape. They've all completed their first 3 ISS integration reviews. That was a kickoff, that was requirements review, and then a preliminary design type review, and all of them are making progress towards the dates that they need to for their ISS integration portion. We have turned on 1 mission so far in CRS-2, and that's an orbital ATK mission, and that was just due to mission needs based on when their CRS-1 when we look at the overall fleet of resupply vehicles out in that time frame and what capabilities there are, and where CRS-1 timing ends up, and we've turned on 1 mission so far.
Okay, let's go to the telephone and take a call from James Dean from Florida Today. James?
Hi, thanks so much. I had a couple of questions for Hans. First, on flight rate, you mentioned before the launch how that's improving. I wondered if you could comment on what is enabling you to sustain this pace you've achieved so far this year? And I think if schedules were to hold, you have a particularly busy stretch coming up with launches from both coasts. Is that a particular challenge for you ahead?
Sorry, I'm not sure I captured the question totally.
James, can you please ask that again? Your audio is just a little bit low here for us to hear.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll try again. Hans, I wondered if you could comment on your flight rate so far this year. What is enabling you to sustain this pace that you're at right now? And you have a busy stretch coming up with launches from both coasts. Is that going to be a particular challenge for you coming up soon?
Okay. Thank you. That's actually an excellent question. So a lot of that is turning things into routine, I would say, and learning just to deal with this operation better and better every time. The situation that we launch from both coasts is something that is somewhat new for us. We've had this with a little bit of separation in the past, and we've set up the teams to be able to cope with that and basically have the ability to launch from both sides within a short time period.
Okay, we have another caller on the line, Brandon from Space News 360.
Hi. First off, congratulations on the successful reuse of the Dragon capsule. I was wondering, now that you've achieved both the first reuse of the first stage and the Dragon capsule, has NASA given any interest in using a reuse core? And if so, what is the timeline on that?
That question goes to you, right? Or?
Yeah, so we are, that question has been posed. We are looking at it. We're evaluating every aspect of it very carefully, and there is no schedule yet when we might go down that path. But we're looking at it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, let's see how things are shaping up on social media. Emily, do you have some questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. This question is from Mary Robinette, and she wants to know, with the successful reuse of the Dragon capsule and Falcon 9's beautiful landing, what's the next milestone you're aiming for?
That's a good question. Well, we have two major milestones coming up with Falcon Heavy and Crew Dragon, both later this year. So that keeps us busy. And I would say those are the two major milestones coming up. Those are pretty big milestones.
Great. There are two more questions from social media. This one's from Joe Foster. How many missions do you think you can continue to reuse a Dragon capsule?
So we planned for multiple missions to be able to use Dragon, and when this Dragon comes back, we will evaluate and see if we. I described this last time. This is like every component has a life, and then every mission takes a little bit off, and you have to have a certain life remaining, basically, in order to do the next mission with margin. And it depends a little bit on how that works out. If I had to guess, probably a couple more.
This last one's from Matt Camper. He wants to know, how did it feel to be the 100th launch from 39A today?
Great.
Okay, Chris has a question here in the front row.
Yeah, for Hans. What's the status of building the new landing pads at LZ-1 in preparation for Falcon Heavy later this year?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. I should have actually driven by that. I don't think we're done with that yet, but I think we started building it. I mean, it's just I'm sorry, I didn't have the time to drive by and take a look. Yeah.
Stephen?
Hi, Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now again. Your next mission, I understand, is sort of a longer mission for you, BulgariaSat. I think it's something like 6 hours to spacecraft separation, based on what I've heard from your customer. Can you talk a little bit about that mission profile and what's required to do that sort of injection? Thanks.
Are you sure? Because I didn't hear that so far, and I would have, like you, I would have paid attention to that, and looked into this more deeply. But I have to admit, I don't have the information on this.
It's from BulgariaSat. They did a journalist presentation last week.
Can we come back to you and
Yes.
maybe see if we can clarify that?
Sure.
Because I'd be surprised.
Okay, Ken.
Hi, Ken Kramer again for Hans. I was just wondering, the Dragon, you have considered using this as an orbiting science lab in the past. I wonder, do you have any missions, any plans, any customers to fly the Dragon in orbit alone?
I know we did consider that, and I know we worked on that, but I don't know what the current status on this project is, whether we will do this or not, frankly.
Okay, we're going to get the microphone to question here in the second row.
Hi, Mary Ellen Jelland from We Report Space. Hans, there's some question about the damage, if there was any damage done to the Dragon on the previous flight, and how was the salt water mitigated?
On the previous flight, you mean the flight before this flight?
Right,
The
yeah.
CS. So this Dragon flew on CRS-4, and from what I can tell, there was no particular damage. When I say it takes lives of components, that's just normal operation. That's basically just the shaking and rattling that you have during launches, and it's not a particular damage per se. It's what the part is designed for. I'm not aware of any damage to Dragon on its. And beyond that usage, the overall, just the normal usage on last flight. And then on the saltwater front, we've made steady progress to keep the saltwater more and more out. Just being in a salty atmosphere is usually already pretty bad. So my understanding is right now that we've cleaned this up pretty well, and that allows us to use more and more components.
Okay. Emily, do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask at this time? All right, then we'll wrap things up with a final question from Sawyer.
Thank you very much, Mike. Sawyer Rosenstein with Talking Space. For Hans, with the launches picking up now, with there being more of them, and with Block 5 being capable of doing barge or land landings, can you talk a little bit about the process, with, for example, 2 weeks coming up between launches, in the decision process on barge versus land landings?
So the barge versus land landing is always driven by, I want to say, how much fuel you have left after your main mission. And if you have enough fuel left, you return to the land. That's in generally easier for us and saves money because we don't have to send the drone ship out there. In general, it seems that drone ship and land landing are equally, I don't want to say easy, but for the rocket itself, it seems to be the same basically in terms of hitting the deck and hitting the landing spot, or rather landing on the right spot. So the decision is literally just depending on how much fuel you have left, and that depends on the orbit, on the satellite, how heavy the satellite is, what kind of mission it is, and all these factors. So we know this we know this a while before. I mean, it's not the 2 weeks. We know this month ahead of time.
So then you're working your schedules to adjust to
Correct.
try and account for the payload weight
Correct.
for that as well.
Yeah, I mean the 2 weeks. At the end of the day, you need to get the vehicle and the payload ready, and we have multiple places where we can do this now. So it's
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Before we leave, I wanted to let you know a couple of notes on NASA television. Before Dragon arrives at the space station, as Ven was talking about, orbital ATK's Cygnus cargo spacecraft is set to depart the station tomorrow. Expedition 52 flight engineers Peggy Whitson and Jack Fisher will be operating the robot arm. NASA television coverage starts at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time for an expected 9:10 a.m. release. And then on Monday, Dragon makes its arrival. NASA television coverage will begin at 8:30 a.m. for an expected capture at about 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And for more information on the SpaceX CRS-11 mission, please visit www.nasa.gov/SpaceX. And more information about the International Space Station, www.nasa.gov/station. Thank you very much for coming.